So this is a case where the outcome even surprised me. I had a call from an ex-client of mine who had a friend that needed some help. And she said this friend was Vietnamese. She didn't speak English very well, but she could write a lot better. So could we converse via text? And I said that would be no problem. So a week later, the lady contacted me. I got a text message through and she said, Cara, I'm having a lot of problems with my husband. Now, with partners, it's sometimes difficult because I normally do have to get the approval to be able to look into their energy properly and remove things if they do have any attachments. In this case, she said that she couldn't really get the approval of her husband. He was getting quite violent. He had changed completely, and he wasn't his usual self. He would be perfectly fine, his normal loving self, and then all of a sudden just have these crazy angry outbursts. She said his eyes would change, his voice would change, strange things would happen in the house. And this had been going on for a little while. So I agreed to take on the case, and I had a look into his energy that night, not knowing how far I'd be able to go since I didn't have his permission. But since it was affecting both their energy and affecting her, then I decided to proceed. So I had a look at his energy that night, and what I saw was, yes, he was definitely being manipulated. He was definitely being, his mind was being affected, and his energy was being affected. Now, what he had attached to him, I'd never seen before. They were demonic, 3 demonic entities, and they were winged creatures. They were like the old ancient type of demonic creature that had the skeletal body with wings, and they were grey. Something that you would think that you'd see in some kind of old book or on a movie about sort of old demons. Very biblical in a sense. They were 3 creatures, and they were attached to his back. They had claws into his back, and they had gotten through his energy to manipulate his mind. So I wrote back to my client and asked her whether she had been anywhere religious or anywhere that was a fairly old historical site, especially somewhere if they weren't meant to be there. Had they done this in the last 6 months? Well, she wrote back and said that they had gone to Vietnam 4 months prior, and they had gone to a site that they had never been to before, where they had ancient caves. Now, these were religious caves, and there was only one that you were allowed into and could walk through. The other ones were blocked off. You weren't allowed in. They were religious sites, and they were very historical. So they'd been old religious sites, and they were not open to the public. Well, apparently it was late in the day, there was no one around, and her husband decided he wanted to venture into one of these religious caves that he wasn't really meant to go into. His wife stayed outside, and he went inside and came back a few minutes later. Now, apparently he never spoke about it, but apparently he was quite shook up, and he was very pale when he came out, and he didn't want to talk about it. He'd only been in there for a couple of minutes. He hadn't gone very far, and he had come straight back out. And she said from then on, she started to see changes in him. and his personality changed and his moods would change and his whole demeanour would change, which was very unlike him. He was a very loving and caring husband. So I told the client in a text that I could remove these demonic entities if she so wanted it, and she agreed, and so we began the process. A few days later, I texted her and told her that I had completed the removal and the balancing of his energy, and that to let me know if there are any problems in the next week or so. She came back to me about a week later and said that he had changed back to his normal self, that everything seemed to be going really well. He hadn't had any mood changes, which happened quite a few times a day apparently, and he was back to his normal self, and everything had been going swimmingly for the last week. So I told her just to monitor and let me know if anything does pop up, and I can have another look into it. But as far as work was concerned, we were finished, and now she could get on with her life. About a month later, I received a call from my ex-client that had referred this other client to me, and she said, "Have you heard what has happened in regards to this client that I had helped?" And I said, no, I hadn't heard anything since she had paid me. I'd done the work, and I said, I thought everything was fine, is it not? And she said, no, that's not the issue. She said, didn't she tell you? And I said, tell me what? She said, when he came out of that cave, about a week later, he started to lose his hair. She said he lost his hair on his eyebrows, all over his head. She said he was completely bald like 3 weeks later once they came back from that Vietnam trip. And I said, she didn't tell me that. And she said, but 2 weeks after you completed the work and removed those demonic entities, she said his hair started growing back. She said his eyebrows started growing back. He's got a small amount of spiky hair on his head. She said they are shocked because they went to every doctor that they could find. They even ordered hair products and specialty hair products from doctors in America. She said they were told it was alopecia, but in the beginning, but it turns out it wasn't. And the doctors couldn't work out why he had lost all of his hair. But she said it's growing back now. They can't believe it. And he doesn't seem to have a hair problem now. So not only were they all shocked, but I was shocked as well. I didn't even know that he had lost his hair. So that's how powerful these things were in changing his energy after they'd attached themselves, and how important it is that people get help if they do have these kinds of attachments. I thank you for listening to this story, and please subscribe to catch more of my client stories.